Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. So today we are going to start a new chapter, that is chapter number 16. But before we start chapter number 16, what we will do is we will basically focus on or we will solve some questions of the chapter number 15 as a quick revision. And we will kind of do a revision of chapter number 15 that we have discussed in the last session. Okay, so let's discuss few questions on chapter number 15 as a revision, and then we'll start with the chapter number 16. Okay, so I hope you guys have read the chapter in detail. You have also gone through the lecture of chapter number 15. So it will be very helpful for you guys when you will go to the questions after reading the chapter study material and after going to the session. Okay, so let's start with the question. Now we will understand the question first, and then I will give you a minute to answer, and then we will discuss further. So the first question is, during a recent audit of large public sector undertaking engaged in power generation, you were tasked with assessing the effectiveness of the company's environmental management system. The audit scope included evaluating PSU's compliance with applicable environmental regulations, the adequacy of environmental monitoring process, and the effectiveness of their initiatives to reduce the emission and criteria and subject matter information in context of this audit engagement, and provide specific example relevant to the EMS audit. So here your task is to identify the subject matter, criteria, and subject matter information with respect to the question which is given. We will go to the point number 2 and 3 later on, but let's first focus on the point number 1, that is define the subject matter, criteria, and the subject matter information. We have discussed all the three in the last session in detail. What is subject matter for our audit? What is the criteria for the audit? And what is the subject matter information for the audit? Similar way, in the last session also, we discussed on this particular point. It's a very critical point. So I expect everyone to answer on this. Okay. Take a minute, read the question again, and then try to answer. What is subject matter, criteria, and subject matter information? Clear now? I hope you guys have read the question. So what is the answer? What is the subject matter? What is the subject matter criteria and the subject matter information? So what do you mean by the subject matter in the current scenario? Anyone? Subject matter in the current scenario? No issues? I'll tell you. What is the subject matter in the current scenario? Basically, when it comes to the subject matter, okay, subject matter is nothing but it refers to the information or condition or activity that is measured, evaluated against the criteria. So what we are measuring over here in this particular question, what we are measuring? So we are measuring here the PSU's environmental management system. Okay, specific components of EMS, that is policies, procedures, monitoring system, training program, that we are measuring. That becomes your subject matter. Now, when I come to the criteria, what is the criteria? Basically, the criteria means, so if you go to the definition, if you understand in detail, criteria is nothing but the benchmark against which we are evaluating the subject matter. Okay, so if you are evaluating your EMS system or your subject matter against something, that is your criteria. So in our case, the criteria is nothing but the environmental regulations that are applicable to the PSU, industry best practices, environmental management, or relevant environmental or international standards that are there. That will be your criteria. And the last one is the subject matter information. Subject matter information is again nothing but the outcome of evaluating. So after evaluating whatever outcome you have, or after measuring the subject matter against the criteria, whatever outcome you have, kind of an opinion That is your subject matter information. Okay. So in the case, whatever outcome you get after evaluating the EMS system, EMS against the established criteria, that is your subject matter information. Could be environmental monitoring data, records, internal audit reports, external certifications, and a lot of things involved in that. So that is your subject matter criteria and subject matter information in context of this particular audit. Any doubt? Any doubt with respect to this one? No, no issues. So in connection to this question only, can anyone tell me how would you plan this particular audit? Let's say I tell you this is a compliance audit. For a time being, understand this as a compliance audit. How will you plan this compliance audit? What steps you will take while planning this compliance audit? Anyone? So what step will you take when you will plan this compliance audit? So my next question is steps to be taken while planning the above compliance audit. So remember what we discussed in our last session? So in our last session, we discussed that when we are planning the compliance audit, it's not something different. It's not the rocket science we are doing over here. It's the audit that we have learned till now. In a similar way, we will plan our compliance audit also. That means the steps which are there in the normal audit will also be taken for the compliance audit. Yes or no? Now, what are those steps we take during the planning of normal audit? Basically, your planning related things. Okay. For example, you plan your scope, you plan how to, gather the information, basic information, you develop the audit strategy plan, you identify the subject matter, you identify the criteria, you understand the entity, you understand internal controls, you establish materiality, assess risk, and plan your audit procedures. All those things we will do here. So when you will plan your compliance audit, what you need to do is basically, first of all, you need to determine the compliance audit objective. Okay. Compliance audit objective is the first thing you need to determine. And then you will go for scope. What is the scope of your compliance audit? So objective and the scope are the first thing to determine. Second comes your strategy. So once you decide what is your scope, you will decide overall strategy about the audit, and then you will go for detailed audit plan. Third, the three things we just now discussed: subject matter, criteria, and after the audit you will get to know about the subject matter information, but subject matter and the criteria are identified in the planning itself. Then you will go for understanding the entity, including internal controls. You will go for establishing materiality for the audit. You will assess the risk, and then you will plan audit procedures. It's nothing but the things that we have seen till now. Okay, whatever you have understood till now, it's all similar. There is nothing new to this one. Clear with this? Any doubts? Any doubt, guys? Okay. If no doubt, let's then proceed to the next question. Very important, very good question that I have. During a recent audit of a public sector undertaking involved in infrastructure development, you were tasked with assessing the compliance with the procurement regulations and ethical conduct of officials involved in awarding the major contract. The audit scope included verifying adherence to the tendering process, evaluating fairness of the selection process, and examining any potential conflict of the interest among the decision makers. Define regularity and propriety in context of this compliance audit. Provide specific examples relevant to the procurement audit. So first you tell me what is regularity and propriety with respect to the compliance audit. Take a minute, read the question again and then try to answer. I hope you have now read the question. So now tell me, what is the regularity mean with respect to compliance audit? Anyone? No? So what do you think compliance audit is with respect to, oh, regularity is with respect to compliance audit? Yes. Okay, Munish. Okay, so I'll tell you what is regularity means. Regularity, when it comes to, let's say for example, we were talking about what? We were talking about few things. For example, subject matter and the criteria. Earlier we understood what is subject matter and criteria. Now, if I talk about regularity, so regularity nothing means adherence of the subject matter to the formal criteria. That means how they both are, related, or how they both are, you can say matching. For example, how much subject matter is in line with the criteria. The more the subject matter is in line with the criteria, the more regularity is into the picture. Means how much compliance you are doing, how much regular you are with respect to the compliance. Okay, so this shows that how much criteria is being followed, how much criteria is being followed. If you answer this, you get your regularity. If you answer that how much criteria is being followed, you are getting your regularity. And propriety is nothing but the sound financial principles, observance of the general principles governing sound financial management, kind of ethical conduct. So when you talk about ethical conduct or or sound financial management, okay, that is behaving like a responsible person, that is your propriety. So when I talk about regularity and propriety, they are the adherence of the subject matter to the criteria and observance of the general principles governing sound financial management or ethical conduct. So that is regularity and proprietary in context of the compliance audit. Clear with this? Any doubt? Any doubt? Okay. Now the question comes is that when you are performing the compliance audit, okay, you may check the compliance with laws and regulations, with some guidelines. A lot of things are there into the picture. Okay. But the point here is that we need to understand that when we go for the compliance audit is kind of the independent assessment of the subject matter with respect to the criteria, and we check that how much regularity is there. Okay. Your proprietary nature is also present, but the prime focus, you might say, that is on the regularity in case of the compliance audit. Okay. Now let's see one more question. This will really help us to understand further the concepts. So you are a leading performance audit of a public sector undertaking. Okay. Engaged in the production and distribution of the fertilizers. The objective is to assess the efficiency and effectiveness of the PSU subsidy disbursement mechanism for farmers. The audit scope includes evaluating the timeliness and accuracy of the subsidy payments, adequacy of the controls to prevent fraud and leakage, and overall impact of the subsidy program on agriculture productivity. Define efficiency and effectiveness in the context of the performance audit. So this is now about the performance audit. So what is efficiency and effectiveness with respect to the performance audit? Explain with respect to the examples relevant to the fertilizer subsidiary audit. You can use this example to explain what is efficiency and effectiveness. Take a minute, read the question again, and then try to answer. Yes, very good, Manish. Very good. Anyone else with any other answer? Anyone? No? No issues. Let me tell you. So, when it comes to the performance audit, as we discussed in the yesterday's session also, performance audits is performance audit basically works on three criteria or three aspects, I would say. First is the economy. Remember, performance audit works on the three aspects. There are three E's. First is in economy, second is in efficiency, and third is in effectiveness. Okay. Now, when I talk about efficiency, now I will take an example of this fertilizer subsidy systems. Okay. When I talk about efficiency, I'm talking about input output ratio. Efficiency means input output ratio. In terms of this fertilizer subsidy audit, my efficiency is kind of time taken to process or disburse the subsidies, or what is the cost incurred to disburse the subsidies, underpayments or overpayments during operation of the subsidy programs. That is my efficiency. When I talk about effectiveness, effectiveness can be basically, you can say, to what extent the objectives are achieved, actual impact of that particular activity. Now, in case or with an example of this fertilizer subsidy, if I talk about effectiveness, that is the impact of the subsidy on the fertilizer usage by farmers, contribution of the subsidy to increase agriculture production, or you can say extent of subsidy that is reaching to the beneficiaries. Okay, so that is the examples of effectiveness and efficiency with respect to fertilizers. Now, when I'm measuring efficiency or effectiveness, okay, there could be a scenario where some of the elements will give you both, like you are measuring efficiency or effectiveness both. Okay, it's not like that. Okay, I can measure efficiency separately without the effectiveness. No, some factors sometimes are of such nature that in which you are measuring both of the things. For example, if I say I'm measuring that, okay, at a given cost, how much of the subsidy is being dispersed and what is the impact of that. So that is kind of evaluating the efficiency and effectiveness both of that program. Okay, and that is your performance audit, that how the program is performing. Clear with this? Any doubt? Any doubt, guys? Okay, if no doubts, the next question that I have with respect to, in continuation to this particular question only, is how do you plan performance audit? What are the steps that are involved in planning of performance audit? So how do you plan performance audit? Anyone? If I ask you, okay, now plan the performance audit, what steps will you take? Again, this is not a rocket science. Similar to question number 1, where we discuss about the compliance audit, you need to just apply the principles of audit when you are coming to the planning of performance audit. So apply the principles over there and then try to answer. Anyone?
Sir,
Yes.
for performance audit, first we will the steps are first understanding the entity and the entity and its program, then determine the objectives and the scope of audit of the entity, then determine the audit criteria for the of the and then determine the audit approach.
Mm-hmm.
Then assessment of team audit team, and if require and check whether any expert is required.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
Then the auditor will prepare the questionnaires,
Okay.
questions for audit.
Yes.
सर एक्चुअली उसमें एक मैट्रिक्स जैसा था, मुझे याद नहीं आ रहा.
Audit design metrics.
Yes sir.
Okay.
Then auditor will establish also the timetable for the audit.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, very good.
Then intimate to the audit entities.
And if I talk about intimation to the audit entities, what name we saw during our previous session for this particular step? Like, what was auditor doing to intimate the auditing entities? Auditor was doing something. There was one term used during which auditor was intimating the entities about the program. Remember? Okay, no issues. Entry conference. Remember? Yesterday we
Yes,
discussed.
sir. And communication to those child.
Yes. So basically, you are absolutely right. Yes, Manish, you are also right. Now the thing is, whatever we discussed, there is nothing different than what we have already discussed in our audit. When it comes to the planning of an audit, whether it's a performance audit or any audit, what do you do first of all? You understand the program or entity. So understanding the entity is the first step, which I'll always link to what we do in SA 315. Yes or no? Then comes the second part, defining the objectives. Okay, defining the objectives and scope. We in the question number one itself, we saw about the scope of the audit. Okay, again, that is nothing but what you do in SA 200, defining the overall objectives.
Yes, sir.
Third is defining the criteria or determining the criteria, basically. Now, what is the audit criteria? Again, we saw in question number one about the audit criteria, and I link same to the SA 200 only.
एक्सक्यूज मी सर,
Yes.
आपको लिख रहे हो क्या कुछ? क्योंकि वो शो नहीं कर रहा है.
Oh, sorry, my mistake. Yeah.
Now visible.
Yeah. Then deciding the audit approach. Now, how do you decide the audit approach? What you need to do? You basically, when you decide the audit approach, it's kind of combination of risk assessment and developing the audit plan. Okay. So strategy, planning, risk assessment, all the three you combine and you decide the audit approach. Basically, you can say where you apply the concepts of SA 300 and 315. Then comes the developing audit questions or, preparing the audit design metrics. They are nothing but, again, the extension of 300 and 315. Remember in our session 315, we discussed about one particular table. That table is nothing but your audit design metrics. Then you decide the skills required. Again, that becomes part of your engagement terms and you can say plus quality control. Because over there, you assess whether you will be able to perform the engagement or not. You determine the time extent of the particular audit. That is nothing but establishing the timetables and resources, nature, timing, and extent. And then finally, you communicate. You communicate that we have already seen similar something to under SA 260, that we communicate to those charged with governance. Here we will communicate to the auditing entities. So this is suggestive, okay, step, or you can say reference, but it is similar that what we have seen, nothing different. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any doubt with respect to how do you plan performance audit? Any doubt or any doubt with respect to the efficiency and effectiveness of the performance audit? No? Okay. If no doubts, let's take one more question. And then, again, we will try to understand these three terms of the performance audit with some other audit. over there you give me an example. What do you mean by these terms? Okay, so let's see. You are conducting performance audit of a public sector undertaking responsible for urban transportation. The audit objective is to assess PSU's performance in terms of economy, efficiency, and effectiveness in operating bus rapid transit system. The audit scope includes evaluating the procurement and maintenance of cost of buses, the ridership, service frequency of the BRT system, and overall impact on reducing traffic congestion and improving public transportation in the city. Define economy, efficiency, and effectiveness in context of this performance audit and provide specific examples. If you can provide, good. But if you cannot provide, just try to define the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. Now, I know we have just now discussed the efficiency and effectiveness, but again, if you can explain this with an example, then it will really increase and improve your clarity of the topic. Take a minute, read the question, and then answer. Okay. I hope you guys have read the question now. Very good, Manish. So, what is economy? If anyone can explain what is economy when it comes to the performance audit, or in this particular scenario, what you meant by economy, or can you give a specific example of economy? What I'm here, I'm talking about the economy aspect of the performance audit. Okay, Jenny, very good. Yes, Manish, very good. Now, efficiency. Very good. Yes, Manish. Anyone else? No? Okay. Yes, Jenny. Yes, Monica. Very good. I'll also show you the examples of the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. Let's see some examples, like, what could be an economy, how we can measure the economy. See, economy means minimizing the cost of resource used. In case of the BRT audit example, the economy means procuring buses at the most competitive prices without compromising the quality, or you can say optimizing fuel consumption through efficient driving and minimizing admin and overhead cost. Okay. Now, again, optimizing fuel consumption can also be your efficiency part. As I say, it's not necessary that one particular element will lead to only one aspect or evaluation of one aspect of the performance audit. Okay, optimizing fuel consumption, or how much fuel cost is there, not only related to the economy but also somewhere will relate to your efficiency. Now, efficiency is maximum output with the minimum input, ensuring higher ridership. Okay, optimizing bus routes, streamlining ticket and fare collection process, reducing operational cost. Okay. And when I talk about effectiveness, it's achieving the intended objectives. That is reducing traffic congestion and travel time, improving air quality and enhancing affordability of the public transport for all citizens. So these are certain examples for your economy, efficiency, and effectiveness of the particular program. Now, the next question, again, very important question, and it's the suggestive one. So it will again enhance your clarity that how you will do the audit. Okay. So the question is, explain how would you assess economy, efficiency, and effectiveness in the scenario. Basically, here we need to give in like how in actual on the ground you will assess the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. Think for a minute and then try to answer. Basically, over here, you will just, this will definitely will enhance your understanding about the performance audit. Come on, guys. Yes, Manish, very good. Anyone? Okay, no issues. I will show you some of the examples. Again, these are the examples basically with respect to the audit procedures, with respect to the type of evidence you will collect, and with respect to the analysis of the finding. Yes, very good, Manish. So, these are certain audit procedures that you can perform. For example, reviewing your procurement records and contract for buses and spare parts, or you can say tender process, analyzing fuel consumption data and maintenance log, evaluating riderships, conducting passenger surveys, interviewing PSU staff, okay, and then comparing BRT system performance with similar systems in other cities. In that, you may collect the evidence, for example, procurement documents, fuel consumption reports, ridership data, passenger survey response, interviews, comparative data, and then you may evaluate basis of the cost per kilometer, fuel efficiency, or ridership trends, service frequency. A lot of things are there on that. So this is how you may actually on ground may perform the audit on the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness of the particular system. Clear with this? Any doubt, guys? Okay. So that was your basically performance audit that we discussed. Before this, we discussed the compliance audit. Any doubt to any of the topic that we have discussed in this chapter or any of the chapter till now? No?
Sir,
Yes.
can you please explain जो 15.27 पे जो कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव ऑडिट से रिलेटेड जो इश्यूज दिए हुए हैं ना, एक बार आप उसे यानी एक्सप्लेन कर देंगे क्या?
Yeah, sure, definitely. 15.27, just a minute. Okay, yeah. Issues with respect to the comprehensive audit. Okay. Now, what are basically these issues, and why these issues arises in case of a comprehensive audit? Basically, if you see, what are these issues? When I talk about first of all comprehensive audit, okay, it is the combination of all. It is the combination of all the audits together, financial, compliance, performance. You perform all the audits together. Okay. Now, when you perform all the audits together, what happens is basically you have to look it from each and every angle. Each and every angle you look at on from the each and every point. Now here, if you see, these are the issues that we examine when we perform the comprehensive audit, or you can say these are the kind of areas that we look into when we perform the comprehensive audit, because at the end I have to look from all the areas. Let's say for first point, how does the overall capital cost of the project compare with the approved plan cost? Okay, whether there is any substantial increase, if so what are these, and whether there is an evidence of extravagance and unnecessary expenditure. So in this particular point itself, if you see, first of all, we are evaluating the overall cost of capital. We are comparing with the approved plan cost, that is nothing but your compliance audit type of thing, that we are evaluating the cost with the approved one, whatever approved was, like whether it is compliant or not. Second, we are seeing that is there any substantial increase, and what is the reason for that, kind of the performance part. And third one, extravagance and unnecessary expenditure, is a proprietary in nature, again part of the performance, you can say. So if you read all those things, all those issues, it shows nothing but the combination of all the audits.
यस सर.
So
सर एक्चुअली इसमें जो यानी कुछ वर्डिंग्स ऐसी है जो यानी थोड़े टफ वर्ड्स हैं थोड़े से
kind of,
इंग्लिश वर्ड्स. जैसे कि अभी आपने एक्स्ट्रा वेगेंस बोला, मैं स्टार्टिंग में इसका एक्चुअल मीनिंग नहीं समझ पाई थी, बट क्या इस तरीके के वर्ड्स हमको लिखने पड़ेंगे या फिर अपना नॉर्मल वर्ड लिख देंगे चलेगा?
I would suggest, see, if you write it's better, but if you can't, then see, unnecessary expenditure is also a term. Okay, it's not in, you cannot write, but if you can write extravagance or some terms which gives the more clarity and more understanding, then it is always helpful and good in presentation.
ओके सर. एक्चुअली सर वो याद नहीं रहते.
See, you have not you don't have to focus on remembering these words. As I said, just focus on the understanding of the topic, and over the time, while writing the answers and comparing your answers with the suggested answers or given answers, you will come to know what to incorporate, what not to incorporate in your answer, and that will come with the writing practice totally.
यस सर.
सर वन मोर थिंग सर, हम जब अभी अगर के क्वेश्चन देखते हैं तो उसमें अगर हमारे को, क्योंकि सब में कॉमन ऑडिट प्रोसीजर्स तो सारे कॉमन है और वो बार बार अगर हर क्वेश्चन में रिपीट हो रहे हैं तो ये कुछ बैड साउंड तो नहीं करेगा कि हमने वापस वही वही पॉइंट्स को हर क्वेश्चन में रिपीट कर दिया जब आंसर लिख रहे हैं? क्योंकि वहां पे तो प्रोसेस तो जो कॉमन प्रोसेस है वो तो सब में आनी ही है.
See, I have seen very less examples where you have to repeat your answer. In some cases, there could be, in case of the standards, it might be there, okay, you have to repeat some line, that is fine, because the question, it involves, writing answer on that. But otherwise, I feel there are very less avenues or very less scenarios where you have to repeat your answer within the different questions.
कंप्लीट आंसर नहीं होता है रिपीट, बट जैसे हेडिंग है वो तो रिपीट होती है. लाइक जैसे ऑडिट प्रोसीजर में भी हम अगर बात करते हैं तो प्लानिंग हो गया, तो प्लानिंग वो सब जगह ही होनी है, तो वो सेम है. नीचे टाइम एंड एक्सटेंड आपका वो सारे जो टर्मिनोलॉजी आपने यूज ली है वो सब कुछ सेम आनी है. तो वो उसमें अगर क्वेश्चन नंबर फर्स्ट और क्वेश्चन नंबर सेकंड में भी अगर कुछ इस तरह से का क्वेश्चन होता है कि इसमें हमें वो ऑडिट प्रोसीजर को कोट करना है, तो हमारे आंसर में वो वापस से रिपीटेटिव लाइंस आ जाती है. तो ऐसा कुछ बैड साउंड तो नहीं होता, या फिर इट्स ओके मतलब?
No. Because if the answer requires, it requires you, then you have to write. It doesn't matter it is getting repeated or not. So let's say, for example, in your question number 1 and in your question number 3, both are somehow related to the risk assessment. You have to write. If there are some overlapping things, you have to write in both.
ओके सर.
Any other doubts? See, where the problem arises where, I have seen, the comments, I have read the comments of the examiner. So usually there is one, publication where you get what was the major issues with respect to the answers after every exam. So I do read those comments, and I also speak. So basically what I have understood is, in some cases, students, what they do is they keep on writing similar things in all the answers, irrespective of what answer requires. So in that case, yes, it's a problem. But if the answers require a thing which is also required in the question number 3 and question number 1, perfectly fine. There is no issue in quoting that at the both places.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Any other doubt, guys? Any other doubt? Okay. Yes.
सॉरी डिस्टर्ब किया।
No, no, no.
सर इसमें जैसे कि मैंने लास्ट लेक्चर में भी डिफरेंट ऑडिट रिपोर्ट्स के बारे में पूछा था। तो इसमें जो परफॉर्मेंस ऑडिट का जो लास्ट स्टेप है, इंटीमेशन ऑफ ऑडिट प्रोग्राम टू ऑडिट एंटिटीज, है ना, तो उसमें दो कम्युनिकेशन टू दो चार विद गवर्नेंस आ गया। तो इसके बाद जो हम कंपनी ऑडिट के अंदर हम जो अपना एनुअल रिपोर्ट प्रिपेयर करते हैं, है ना, तो वो एक सिंगल ऑडिट रिपोर्ट होता है, जैसा कि लास्ट में भी हमने डिस्कस किया था। तो मैं उसमें ये पूछना चाहती हूँ कि जो स्टैट्यूटरी ऑडिट है वो भी तो गवर्नमेंट कंपनीज की होती होगी ना?
Yes.
तो वो ये इन सब ऑडिट रिपोर्ट्स को कंसीडर करके वो बनती है, या फिर वो अलग से सारे एसेज कंसीडर करके बनती है?
No, no, no. So when it comes to the statutory audit report, okay, under Companies Act, for the companies which are government companies, it is a similar portion that you have in other companies.
Yes,
There's
sir.
nothing difference. It has to be, essays are required to be followed because it's an audit under Companies Act. Companies Act requires you to follow auditing standards.
Yes, sir.
Then you have to follow auditing standards.
एंड सर ये जो गवर्नमेंट डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं उनके लिए क्या अप्लाई होगा?
These reports, because those departments are not companies registered under the Companies Act, so they don't have, see, again, if that is a specific corporation, so they have their auditing requirements in their specific act. For example, LIC.
Yes, sir.
Companies have Companies Act, but departments don't have any specific requirements other than the constitution, and that is also, one article 151.
Yes, sir.
That's why under Article 151, CNAG conducts these various types of audit for those departments, which is performance, financial, compliance, all the type of audits.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir. Now clear. Thank you, sir.
Any other doubt? Manish, actually, it's a corporation established under Life Insurance Corporation Act. LIC is an company, or is it corporation basically incorporated under the Life Insurance Corporation Act. So if you see the section 3 of the LIC Act says that with effect from the date, government will appoint some persons and will establish a corporation, that is LIC. So it contains a requirement of board of directors and everything in the particular act. So it's you can say a specific corporation.
Sir?
Yes.
एक चीज और पूछनी थी, जैसे कि अभी न्यूज में हम सुनते हैं, मैं पर्टिकुलर नेम नहीं लूंगी, मैं पूछूं कि नहीं?
No issues. If you want, you can write it in the chat box.
Okay, sir. I will write in chat box.
Yes, Manish, they can get listed. Corporations can get listed, not an issue. Any other doubt, guys? Any doubt? No issues in that. You can ask freely. If you can also write in the chat box, perfectly fine. No? Okay. No issues. So, meanwhile, Jenny, you write your query. I'll proceed to the chapter number 16 now. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Now, we will discuss and we will start our chapter number 16. Now, chapter number 16, very interesting chapter. I personally feel very interesting. It's about internal audit. And here, we will see the difference that is there between the statutory audit or, this audit, the financial audit that we see, and the internal audit. Okay. Somewhere down the line, you might feel that it is something getting linked with the compliance or performance audit that we have seen, but understand that it is beyond that. Okay, in today's time, it is also increased its scope. It has increased in scope, and it has expanded to a very good area. Okay, now, can anyone tell me, when I use this term internal audit, what is the first thing that comes in your mind? What kind of audit you are thinking?
Under the control of management audit.
Okay, yes, very good. Anyone else? SA 600, yes, good. But SA 600 is something linked to the use of other auditors, but okay, fine. You can say use of internal auditors will be the correct one over here. Anyone else?
SA 610, using the work of internal audit with respect to other audit.
Yes, very good. What else? Like, if I talk about internal audit, what do you think can be the scope of internal audit?
Sir, I have sent my question.
Yes,
Chat.
Sir, monitoring and reviewing the work of like operating work or compliances with law and other risk management activities जो मैनेजमेंट उनको करने के लिए कहे काइंड ऑफ एम्प्लॉय बिहेवियर हो जाता है इंडिपेंडेंस जो एक स्टैचुरी ऑडिट के पास होती है वो इंटरनल ऑडिटर के पास में लेसर हो जाती है बिकॉज वो हर चीज को एक्सप्लोर करके इतना फ्रीडमली हर चीज अपनी नहीं देख सकता उसको कहीं ना कहीं वहां पे एक लिमिटेशन आ जाती है कि दैट्स द इंटरनल ऑडिटर
yes, yes, very good. Yes, correct, Manish. See, when I talk about the term internal audit, okay, earlier or the traditional, there are two concepts basically. I'll tell you. The traditional concept of the internal audit was basically, having the compliance or, checking the internal controls or, checking on the monitoring on the internal controls. That was a traditional concept that was there. But with the passage of time, with the evaluation, internal audit grew. The function in itself, now we call that an internal audit function. In any of the multinational corporates or a company, there's a separate internal audit function, and that we call as a line of defense. Okay. So line of defense is not only with respect to the a particular internal control related line of defense, but there are multiple things. So first line of defense in a company is your internal controls. Yes or no? Your first line of defense in a company is your internal controls. Your second line of defense comes as in your internal audit. And your third line of defense is your then statutory audit. Okay, statutory auditors are your third line of defense. That is, now in current times it is known as. But if I say line of defense, it's not only related to the basic or financial risk. No, it has grown. It has has expanded its scope in much more bigger sense. Line of defense with respect to multiple areas. I will tell you certain areas that are now part of internal audit, but earlier it was never thought of. Okay, for example, now internal audit not only talks about basically your audit of internal controls, but they talk about more onto data privacy audits. They also sometimes include your IT audits. They also include privacy audit, IT audits, then compliance audits. The similar compliance audit just now we saw in PSU is also here. Okay, third party service audits. A lot of things are now involved in the part of internal audit. Sometimes quality assurance also comes into the picture. Okay, so there are lot many things. There is a kind of in today's time, somewhere in some of the corporates or in some of the multinational companies, you will see forensic audit being part of forensic accounting being part of internal audit. Although it's altogether separate, but yes, as in part, like there is one chief internal audit officer or executive who looks after for all these functions. So in today's time, internal audit has expanded its scope in a much more wider way. And that's what we see or what we will learn over here. Okay. The scope of internal audit, the provisions which are there under Companies Act, the basic understanding of the internal audit function, and then we will go for the internal audit reporting. Okay, how the reporting happens and what are key documents. I'll also tell you something on the audit trail and a lot of things. Okay. Now, the second thing, before I go to the scope of internal audit and we discuss the scope in detail, I will take one particular topic, that is the Companies Act, applicability of the internal audit function to the companies. Can anyone tell me which is the section which talks about internal audit under Companies Act?
138.
And what is the requirement of 138 with respect to internal audit? Like which companies are required to have internal auditors?
Paid up share capital is 50 crore or more, or turnover is 200 crore or more.
Yes.
And two more applicability is 100 crore outstanding loan plus borrowing, and one deposit is 25 crore rupees or more.
Yes, very good. Anyone else? Very good, Manish. Yes, you were saying something?
I was telling about unlisted company, and every private limited company also has two points.
Yes. Very good. Now, when I talk about, as you correctly pointed out, the applicability of the internal audit or the applicability of the one section 138, okay, read with the rule 30, now is basically divided into three categories. Okay, so companies accounts rule number 13, okay, talks about three different categories to which the requirement is applicable. So the first one is your listed entity. In case of a listed entity, every listed entity is required to have an internal audit function. In case of unlisted public company, okay, the requirement is basically when your paid up share capital is 50 CR or more, your turnover is 200 CR or more. Okay. Your outstanding loans is 100 CR or more, and your deposits are more than 25 CRs. Again, outstanding deposits more than 25 CRs. Okay. And the third category goes for the private limited companies. For the private limited company, the first criteria is turnover 200 CR or more. And the second criteria is your outstanding loans. That should be your 100 CR or more. Okay. And if a company is getting covered under any of the criteria, okay, then they get, they have to comply within 6 months. That was a transition provision that they will be getting 6 months to comply with the provision of this particular chapter. Now it is, if they are falling under the category, they have to comply from the start of the year. Now the question is whether these conditions are required to be tested in standalone basis, or whether these conditions are like with respect to end, that all the conditions should satisfy or any one condition should satisfy. So I would say, do I need to satisfy all the 4 conditions for unlisted public company to appoint internal auditor, or any one condition?
Sir, anyone.
Yes. So any one condition is required, not the all conditions. Basically, it is or in each and every case. So if any one condition is getting satisfied, then you have to appoint internal auditor. Okay. Now, who can be an internal auditor? A chartered accountant, a cost accountant, other professional, as per section 138, yes, these can be internal auditor. But the question is, do we need chartered accountant who is in practice or not? So CA should be in practice for getting appointed as an internal auditor.
It CA in services can also, yes, conduct 138 audit.
So you are saying CA in service can also conduct internal audit?
Might be, sir, right, यही होना चाहिए, क्योंकि बिकॉज इतने बड़े सारे जो फर्म्स है वो सब में इन प्रैक्टिस ही मतलब नहीं होते, वो सर्विस वाले ही होते हैं और वो इंटरनल ऑडिट कर रहे होते हैं.
Yes, absolutely correct. So it is not necessary that the chartered accountant, cost accountant shall be engaged in practice. It is whether or not. Both are allowed. Perfectly fine. He might be engaged in practice. He might not be engaged in practice. Not necessary for that. Now, usually I get one question over here is that, remember section 144 of the Companies Act? Yes or no? Remember section 144 of the Companies Act? Auditor not to render certain services.
Yes, sir.
Here, the point number B to section 144 talks about internal audit. Where point number B talks about internal audit. In that case, how would you say, like, how it will, don't you think it's a conflicting with section 138? That is the usually question I get. So section 144B talks about that auditor not to render internal audit service. Then how it is it conflicting to section 138? Yes or no?
सर ये क्वेश्चन हमें प्रोफेशनल एथिक के टाइम पे पूछना चाहिए था.
Okay. So basically, what section 144 talks about. Section 144 restricts a bar on the statutory auditors. If a person, a chartered accountant, is not a statutory auditor, then he doesn't fall under the purview of section 144. In that case, he can be an internal auditor of the firm. So section 138 and section 144 are different. 144 restricts bar on the statutory auditor not to be an internal auditor. That means you cannot have statutory auditor and internal auditor a same person. Okay, so if you read section 138 and 144 together, it means you should have internal auditor and statutory auditor both different. Okay, and it's beyond that. Sometimes I get questions, sir. Let's say, for example, there are two subsidiaries. Okay, let's say this is subsidiary A, this is subsidiary B, and this is, let's say, parent company. Now, for each of the entity, there are two: internal auditor, statutory auditor. Internal auditor, statutory auditor. Okay. So someone asked me this question, and that is very good question also, I would say. So someone told me that for subsidiary A, internal auditor was, this is internal auditor. So internal auditor was ABC and company. For subsidiary B, internal auditor was not ABC company, but statutory auditor was ABC and company. For subsidiary A, statutory auditor was your, let's say, DEF. And that was internal auditor for subsidiary B. Same way, the statutory auditor for parent company was someone else, let's say XYZ. And the internal auditor was your DEF. Is this arrangement fine? So is this arrangement, do you think, fine? Is it perfectly fine? So in each and every company, the internal auditor and the statutory auditor are different. I read the sections 144. Section 144, auditor not to render internal audit service. It is not rendering. Do you think it is perfectly fine? Section 144, section 138, both together?
सर आइडियली तो नहीं होना चाहिए. आइडियली तो पेरेंट में अगर पेरेंट या एनी ऑफ द सब्सिडी has direct or indirect relationship with any auditor in respect of statutory auditor or internal auditor, they can't be they must be different person, not a single one.
Absolutely correct. Section 144, that's why it's very important to understand who can be internal auditor. This is not from the statutory auditor point of view, but this is from the internal auditor's point of view. This section, understanding the section 144, help us understand whether I can be an internal auditor for the subsidiary or not. Section 144 says that auditors not to provide internal audit service to company, holding, or its subsidiary directly or indirectly. So it not only restricts to the company, but it says that holding and subsidiary both. Now let's say if this isn't statutory auditor of subsidiary, that means he cannot provide internal audit service to holding by virtue of section 144. Okay, so this will be not allowed. Similar way, I could say that, okay, ABC and company is an statutory auditor over here. They are becoming internal auditor in subsidiary B. It could be said that they are indirectly rendering service to the subsidiary company. Again, that could be not allowed. So, in such a way, we have to see whether the charter accountant is getting barred under, or whether the charter accountant or the auditor is, whether he is eligible to get appointed as an internal auditor. We have to also see section 144 for that. Okay, so 144 also has impact on the appointment of internal auditor, not only statutory auditor but internal auditor, because it restricts a person or a chartered accountant to provide the internal audit service.
सर, आपके इस क्वेश्चन से एक क्वेश्चन मेरे दिमाग में भी आया है, क्या मैं पूछ सकती हूँ?
Yes, sir, sure.
सर, जैसा आपने इसमें ये अरेंजमेंट बताया, तो मान लीजिए कि ऑडिटर यानी एक सीए है, ठीक है, तो अगर इसके अंदर तो यानी कंपनी अलग अलग है, काम एक ही कर रहे हैं, है ना, लेकिन अगर एक सीए, उसकी पार्टनरशिप फर्म भी है और खुद की कंपनी भी है ना, और एक ही एंटिटी को अकाउंटिंग सर्विसेज एंड स्टैट्यूटरी सर्विसेज डिफरेंट डिफरेंट नेम पे प्रोवाइड करता है, तो क्या वो कर सकता है?
So for this, again, 144 talks about directly or indirectly. He cannot render these services. Now, when I talk about directly or indirectly, that means either through himself as an individual, or through his relative, or through any other person or entity in which he has a significant influence. Now, let's say partnership firm.
Yes, sir.
Partnership firm, he will have a significant influence, means although he is an individual, he is an auditor for a particular company, he cannot be an internal auditor, okay, through an entity where he has a significant influence. That's a partnership firm, whether or not the name, trademark or brand is similar or not. So it can have a different brand also altogether.
सर, एक क्वेश्चन हमें भी बता दीजिए। सर, एक क्वेश्चन हमें भी बता दीजिए सर। वो एक जो सर्विस में सीए होता है, वो अपनी सर्विस के साथ विदाउट सीओपी, राइट, जिसमें सीओपी का भी मतलब मेंबरशिप फी पे कर रहा है, बट वो सीओपी नहीं है, उसने लिया। एंड वो अपने इस सर्विस के अलावा वो कौन कौन सी सर्विस, मतलब लाइक किस किस बिजनेस में और जा सकता है विदाउट एनी इंटरप्शन? क्या आप सर्विस कर रहे हो नहीं जा सकते? लाइक टीचिंग को छोड़ के, टीचिंग इज पार्ट टाइम जॉब, उसको छोड़ के।
That relates to the regulations. Okay, chartered accountants regulation. Now, remember there was general permission, special permission scenarios we discussed.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We need to refer, yeah.
बट सर, उसमें आपने बताया था कि वो ऑल सीएस पे एप्लीकेबल होती है, लाइक जो जिनके पास सीओपी वगैरह होती है उनको अलग से परमिशन होती है, और ये सब चीजें आपने तब बताई थी।
See, there are, when a person is in employment, there are two things that are applicable to him. Number one, these regulations. Number two, employment agreement. There are a lot of times, there are restrictions in your employment agreement also. In certain
no restriction in employment agreement. जो टाइमिंग है, लाइक किसी का टाइमिंग अगर जॉब का 8 to 5 है, या किसी का टाइमिंग अगर 11 to 8 है, तो जो डिफरेंस है 8 सुबह मॉर्निंग 8 to 11 का, या फिर 5 के आफ्टरवर्ड का, जब वो अपनी जॉब से फ्री है, उसमें कोई रिस्ट्रिक्शन नहीं है। देन वो अगर कुछ करना चाहता है लाइक अलग से, तो उसके पास क्या क्या स्कोप्स है?
I would say the general permission items are allowed. He can do that. But if we want to do some specific permission one, then he need to take permission. But general permission are allowed.
सर एक्चुअली क्या ना, मेरा क्वेश्चन सेकंड था इसके बाद कि कुछ लोगों को मैंने देखा कि कंसल्टेंसी सर्विसेज देना स्टार्ट कर देते हैं, तो अलॉन्ग विद जॉब, तो मेरे माइंड में हमेशा ये क्वेश्चन आता है क्या उनको ये चीज अलाउ हो गई, और वो कैसे वो अपना टाइम मैनेज करते हैं, क्योंकि कंसल्टेंसी सर्विसेज के लिए आपने किसी को हायर कर रखा है, वो बैठे नहीं है वहां पे, जस्ट हायर कर रखा है, जब वो अपने ऑफिस टाइम से फ्री होता है उसके बाद वो सारे केसेस देखता है, दैट्स इट, बट उनका सेकंड बिजनेस स्टार्ट हो गया इससे।
See, I would say in this regard, again, it's very subjective to comment, but those restrictions are majorly in your employment agreement. What kind of employment you are into, there your restrictions come into the place rather than the what you can say, chartered accountants regulation. Okay, if something is permitted in general part, okay, general permission is allowed, and in that case, there is no restriction in the employment agreement. Usually that doesn't happen. There are restrictions in the employment agreement, there are conflict of interest, there are a lot of things involved into it. But if again, let's say for an example, hypothetical example, there is no restriction in the employment agreement, then general permission things can be done, not an issue in that. If he is doing something specific like advisory or consulting, now over there, the thread or the fundamental principles are also applicable to them, also applicable to the chartered accountant in employment. At that point in time, he needs to make sure that whatever services are being provided, whatever activity is being done, whether there is any threat to any fundamental principle or not. For example, independence. Okay, so he has to make sure that he is independent, that we have studied that in mind or in actual both. So all those things have to be complied at that time. But 99% employment agreement doesn't allow. Trust me.
ओके सर।
Okay, so we were talking about section 144, its implications on the appointment of internal auditor. Okay, so that was the section 144. Now coming to the SEBI LODR. Okay, we saw that each and every listed company is required to have an internal auditor. Yes or no? Internal audit function.
Yes, sir.
Same is being seen in SEBI LODR. If you go and read the SEBI LODR, over there's a role of audit committee. Okay, I'll not go into much detail, but there's a role of audit committee. Over there, it is being discussed that what is the role of audit committee, to whom internal auditor should report, and how the internal audit function should be set up in an organization or in a listed entity. Okay. So a listed entity is not only required to follow section 138 rule 13, but they are also required to follow SEBI LODR. Plus, there are some other, time to time regulations that are issued by the SEBI for the listed entity with respect to the internal audit function. And when I talk about, different categories of entities, now this is one of the entity as a listed entity I'm talking about. Now, if you go to RBI regulated entity, for example, banks, for example, NBFCs, over there you will find different requirement with respect to internal audit function. So it's not like that, over there, like this is the only requirement. No. But when you go to any other act, any other area, any other specific, category, you will find a different requirement with respect to the internal audit function. So over there are specific guidelines which are given. Okay, what should be the function should look like, what should be the roles and responsibility of the function, a lot of things are there. Okay, so this is the basic section 138 which is applicable in this case. there are other provisions, other related things which are applicable to other departments and other entities. Insurance may have different, NBFC may have different, banks may have different, even your different RBI governed entities may have a different internal audit requirement. Okay, so accordingly you need to evaluate what are the requirements for the internal audit function, and you need to see whether that is in compliance with those provisions or not. So these are this is something on a legal side that I'm talking about with respect to internal audit function. Now coming to one very important part, okay, that is how the function should work. Let's say as a chartered accountant, okay, if I am an internal auditor, am I required to follow standards on auditing?
Yes, you have to.
Okay, so I need to comply with SA, you are saying?
Sir, there are some different standards also related to internal auditor, standards on internal auditing.
Yes.
That also ICAI has provided.
Yes. So ICAI has set up a internal audit standard board. Okay. So it's a non-standing technical board which is there since 2004. Now that board has constituted some internal audit standards on internal auditing. There are guidance notes. These are being reviewed from time to time. There are implementation guides, there are technical guides, practice manuals. A lot of things are there. Okay. And these are applicable for all the internal auditors who are chartered accountants. So there is a framework governing internal audit in those particular standards. There is a detailed list of standards, like there are multiple standards in that, including your framework, basic principles of internal audit, and preface to the internal audit. Okay, they are worth reading because that will again give you a good clarity about the topic, about the what is internal audit in actual, what are the roles and responsibility of internal audit. Then there are multiple standards, as we have seen, SA being divided into categories. For example, you have SA 200 series, 300 series, you have SA 500 series. Okay, similar way, you have multiple categories in those standards. For example, you have standard 100 series which are on the key concepts on the internal audit, 200 series which are on the standards on internal audit management. You have 3 to 400 series of standards which are on the standards on conduct of audit assignments, that how we need to conduct internal audit assignments. There's a 500 series standards on specialized areas. And there are some different standards which are issued up to 1st July 2013, and they were replaced with the new standards. Okay, so basically,
But along with general standard which we learn, matlab, like from SA 200 to SA 700, it's also applicable for the internal audit, right?
no. So okay, now when we talk about SA, okay, what is an SA? SA is basically the engagement and quality control standards. So these are the standards for the various assurance engagements and the quality control standards. They are not the standards on internal auditing. So if you read all these standards which are there, they are applicable to assurance engagement. In most of the standards, you have seen independence as a requirement, except for one. Except for one particular standard, in each of the standard you have seen of the independence requirement. That is your SRS 4400. Yes or no? In agreed upon procedures, we saw that okay, there might not be an engagement related independence related requirement, but apart from that, each and every standard require you to be independent. If you are an employee of an organization, if you are internal audit and employee, how can you maintain your independence? That we have also seen in SA 610. Yes or no?
Yes, yes, sir. Got it. Answer मिल गया.
That's why your essays are not applicable to internal audit, but there's a separate set of standards for that. Now the question is, are you required to go through each and every standard the way we have gone through
Sir, I
the...
have a query.
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir, the basic fundamental principles of auditing has to be applied in the internal audit also.
So, see, when it comes to the fundamental principles of the auditing, it will remain same across all the audits. Like, for example, if you perform any type of audit, the fundamentals will remain same. Okay. Now, how to apply those fundamentals by tweaking it? That's why you have a basic principles on internal audit being published by the Board of Internal Audit and Management Accounting that has been set up by ICAI. So
And sir,
over
the
there, yes,
SQC one is also not applicable to internal audit?
no.
Okay, clear, sir.
Any other doubts? Okay. So when I talk about basic principles of internal audit, okay. So basic principles of internal audit, again, if you go through that particular document, if you go through the requirement, it talks about same things. Those are the same principles. Independence, like, you have to maintain it, but like in a different way, because now you are the employee with the entity, but you have to demonstrate your independence within the organization. Okay. Integrity, objectivity, it has to be there. Due professional care, confidentiality, skills and competency, everything is that the basic principle that we have seen is applicable over there also. For example, you have risk based audit in internal audit also. Yes, there's a system and process focus. So these are the things that the basic principles will remain same that we have seen, but there will be certain changes, some tweaking will be there when it comes to the application of those principles. Now, for example, let's say nature of assurance. So again, one particular standard which is there, which talks about what about the assurance that is there in the internal audit. Okay. Similar way, you have a different standards. Now, the question comes is, are you required to learn all these standards in detail the way you have learned, like, the auditing standards? So, whatever we will discuss now in the session as of now, that's the only portion you are required to learn, not the all standards. Okay, we will touch up upon sub standards, not in all standards in detail. Okay, so we will touch upon certain standards, but those are the only standards that you are required to go into. Yes, if you want, you can go further as an additional reading material for your understanding. But whatever is given your study material, that is fine. Clear?
Yes, clear, sir.
Okay. Any other doubts? Any doubt, guys? Okay. If no further doubts, what I suggest is let's take a quick 10-minute break. After the break, we'll gather back and continue the session. Okay. Let's take a quick 10-minute break. Yes. Thank you. Hello everyone, welcome back and let's continue the session. So we were discussing about the standards on internal auditing. Okay, we discussed in detail, the standards that are there for the internal audits, and we will see some of the standards. We will, go and discuss on some of the standards. Now we need to understand the scope of the internal audit function. Okay, so scope of internal audit function, that what we have understood till now, like primarily with respect to internal controls or with respect to laws and regulations, that is only just partial portion of it, not even full portion. So if you want to understand the full scope, I will show you some of the examples. Okay, so the first is, as usual, the standard one that we see multiple times. It's the monitoring of internal controls. Okay, that is a standard, or you can say the main and important function that is going through from years and years. That is the monitoring of internal controls. Post that, there is another function of internal audit. There is another scope of internal audit, is compliance, review of compliance with laws and regulations. Okay, so it comes that for internal audit, that okay, they have to look into compliance with laws and regulations of a particular organization. Review of compliance with laws and regulations. Okay, then after that, you have very important part is examination of the financial and operating information. For example, inventory management review. For example, aging review or data's review. Okay, review of their policies. So how these actually happen, and the review of sales record, review of you can say some transactions. So examination of financial records, I will say. Apart from internal control, examination of financial records. Then you have another function, that is, or another scope or objective of the internal audit, that is risk management. Now this is very, very wide. Very wide. Reason, because when I talk about risk management, nowadays this risk management has gone a step ahead, and they look into various type of risk in a case of a particular organization. For example, if you go to any of the annual report, basically in any of the entity, they usually write about what risk they have, and within the organization they describe about the risk that they have, and what are their plans for the risk management and risk maintenance. Everything that you see over there is also covered by the internal audit. So it's not only that internal audit is with respect to what you say, basically only internal controls. No, nowadays it's more onto the risk management also. They look for the various type of risk within the organizations. Even in coming days, we will see internal audits stepping into your ESG audits. Yes, so as of now you have a BRSR reporting, we will see in chapter number 18. But in future, internal audit will also take a step ahead and will go into environmental risk, climate related risk, climate related reporting. So it's not only that you have an internal audit function that is traditionally focusing on those areas. It will increase, the scope will increase from time to time, and it is being increased right now. Okay, then apart from this, we have basically some more functions with respect to the internal audit. Okay. For example, you can say governance related function. Now, what is governance related function? Governance related function is basically, function that deals into the a step higher into the risk management. They are into the more on the risk governance, not only managing the risk, but they are governing the risk. Okay. They are governing various type of risk within the organization. Not only risk, but they are also governing the activities, processes, kind of, you can say, beyond the management. Okay. How the corporate governance is working, how the corporate governance is there, whether the sound principles of corporate governance being followed or not. So governance is one very important area nowadays, which is there into the internal audit. You can say corporate governance, you can say, risk governance, a lot of things are there in that. Okay. So these are certain areas where the internal audit nowadays, is pretty much working into or expanded, or they have these areas or of scope. Any doubt with this? Clear with this till now? Okay. Now, let's talk about with respect to the standards on the internal auditing. Okay. As we already discussed, these standards basically provide that how to conduct the internal audit. Okay. The way we have these standards for auditing, similar way we have standards for internal auditing. Okay. They guide us how to conduct internal audit. So, if you see, there is one particular standard. We will, now touch upon certain key standards. So there is one particular standard that I want to talk about. Basically, that is standard on internal auditing 210. That is managing the internal audit function. Okay, managing the internal audit function. Now, this particular standard basically talks about how an internal audit function is required to be managed in an organization. Okay, what are the key things that are required to be done when you set up an internal audit function in an organization? Okay, basically this standard provides guidance on the internal audit function set up in an organization. Now, what it says, it defines that how you can have the internal audit function. For example, like planning related things, the way we have seen, in SA 200 series, we have seen SA 210, we have seen SA 200 and 315. Okay. Similar way we have over here in 210. Here in 210, what we have is like how an entity should focus upon internal audit function, like defining the overall plan, scope, methodology of internal audit function, how to assign assignments to them, who will assign the assignments, who will look on to the assignments which are given to internal audit function, who will decide everything about internal audit function. All those stuff that is there is defined under SA, that is SIA 210. Okay. Now I will also show you the audit, one of the report. Wait a minute. We will also discuss one of the annual report. Okay, where we will see about something more about the internal audit function, where we will look into that. Okay, what is given about the internal audit and how it is specified over there with respect to the internal audit. So when it basically comes to the internal audit, okay, in an entity, you would see that and the structure of the internal audit is such a way that they are, like we have discussed this in SA 610 also, that they are basically reporting to the audit committee. Remember, we discussed this point, that the organizational structure of the internal audit is something very critical if we have to rely upon the function of the internal audit. Yes or no? Remember in SA 610 that we discussed that if you want to use the work of internal auditor, you have to understand whether the function, internal audit function, could be relied upon or not. And that comes with the this particular part, where and how they do report. Okay, what they do, who looks after them. All these things are very important when it comes to the internal audit function. So let me show you one example. Wait a minute, it's opening up, just a minute. Okay, see, now we will discuss something about internal audit function. Okay, this is what we are discussing. What I'm showing you is the review of the this is the environmental and sustainability reporting, ESG reporting, that is BRSR reporting. In that you have one specific area. Okay, that area is basically about, has the entity carried out independent assessment or evaluation on the working of its policy by an external agency? If yes, provide the name of agency. Okay, now they are talking about policies and procedures, whether the policies and procedures are being followed or not. And if you see, it is written that the implementation of the code of conduct and other policies are reviewed through internal audit function. Means internal audit function nowadays not only looks onto the internal controls, but the ethics policies, the code of conducts for an entity. They go beyond the internal controls and they look into the ethic policies, and how these policies are being complied, how these policies are being followed. Okay, another thing I will show you, see this one. A well-established, independent, multidisciplinary internal audit team operates in line with the governance best practice. Okay, this is part of your annual report, publicly available data. Okay, it reviews and reports to the management and the audit committee about the compliance of internal controls that we have seen already, the function, efficiency, effectiveness of the operations that we have seen, as well as the key risk process. The scope and authority of the internal audit division is derived from the internal audit charter. Now that is, we need to something understand. What is internal audit charter? See, these are certain documents, internal audit charter, internal audit code. Basically, you will hear in a lot of companies. Now, what are these documents? Internal audit charter is basically a document which defines the rights, obligation, reporting line, authority, code of ethics, everything about the internal audit. How internal audit will function is defined in the internal audit charter. Okay, basically you can say it's kind of a guiding light for the internal audit function in an organization, that how they have to work upon the mission, purpose, the the standards they have to follow, the authority they hold, what can they do in the organization, what is their scope, what is their responsibility, to whom they will report. Everything is there in the internal audit charter. Okay, which is approved by the audit committee. Now, why audit committee coming into the picture? Reason, because of the Companies Act. Now, if you read the Companies Act Rule 13 that talks about internal audit function, it says that the audit committee of the company or the board, in consultation with the internal auditors, will formulate the scope, functioning, periodicity, methodology of the conduct of internal audit. That is there in the Rule 13 of the Companies Act. Okay, that the audit committee along with the board of the company will decide how the internal audit will function. Internal audit charter is something that how internal audit will function, and that is approved by the board. means they are complying with the Rule 13 of the Companies Act. Okay. Along with the anti-fraud programs, whistleblowers mechanism, which are operating within the company. Now, here, like, in a lot of places, you will read that, okay, the third line of defense is internal audit. Somewhere you will read the second line of defense is internal audit. So, like this way, but the important point here is to understand is internal audit function is a line of defense. Okay, which provides the comfort or assurance kind of thing to the entity. Furthermore, if I show you something more onto this.
Sir, I have a query.
Yes.
Sir, internal audit is much more bigger than the statutory audit.
Yes. See, in statutory audit, your scope, your responsibilities are either bound by the Companies Act and the standards. But in the case of internal audit, it is beyond that. It is not only the standards, it can be much more. Like each and every company can decide the scope of internal audit function by its own through the charter. Okay, and that's why it is much more bigger in the scope compared to this external audit.
Yes, got it.
And majoritarily, if you read the audit committee is the one who is charged to the monitoring of the internal audit function. I can show you that also. So if you see over here, this is audit committee's roles and functions. And here, if you'll review the adequacy of the internal audit function, including structure of the internal audit department, staffing, seniority, chief internal auditor, and everything. Discuss the internal auditor and senior management about the significant internal audit findings and follow-ups and all that stuff. Means audit committee is given charge to discuss and define the internal audit function in an organization. And why it is so? Audit committee is counted as management or those charged with governance. Where do you count in the audit committee?
Sir, TCWG.
Correct. Now, when we were reading SA 610, what we read with respect to the this organizational structure of the internal audit function. Anyone? When you were reading the SA 610, what you discussed, what you read about the organizational structure of the internal audit function? We have discussed this, guys. Come on, quickly. Yes, no, no one? Okay. So when we were referring or when we were discussing SA 610, okay, at that time we saw that, okay, we have to check two important things. One is the objectivity and second is the competency for the internal audit function. Objectivity refers to the ability to perform tasks without allowing bias and conflict of interest. Yes or no? Organizational status reflects the objectivity of the internal audit function. They, provide whether the internal audit function is objective or not. If internal audit function is reporting to the management, it will be, it can be concluded that there could be a conflict of interest or there could be undue influence by the management. But if on the similar, if in another example, if I take, if internal audit function is reporting to those charged with governance, not to the management, then I could conclude that they have the higher objectivity in that scenario. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
That's why everywhere. If you see the SEBI LODR also, SEBI LODR also says that the audit committee should be responsible for reviewing the internal audit function so that the objectivity of the internal audit function can be maintained, as we see in the SA 610. So organizational status of the internal audit function, including functions, authority, and accountability, should support the ability of the function to work as a free of conflict of interest, undue influences, and something which cannot override the professional judgment. This is how they can do it, by assigning the responsibility to the audit committee. This actually happens on the ground like this way. Now, internal audit in most of the organizations, they directly report to the audit committee. Okay. And chief internal auditor reports to the audit committee. They ensure that they are independent and everything. So that is standard practice across the industry. Okay. And they provide all those details and everything. Now, coming back to the discussion on the internal audit scope and, some areas. So basically, when, we are talking about the functions of internal audit, let's say compliance, organizational structure, or like we are talking about, governance. So what it actually includes, what it actually refers to. See, internal audit does not only refers to the, as I'll quote this multiple times. So the basic understanding is internal controls. It's not that simple. For example, review of internal control system is one thing, but let's say, for example, safeguard of asset. Safeguard of asset, it's beyond internal control. It is kind of, whether the assets are being utilized, the code of conduct we saw, ethical guidelines are being followed appropriately or not. Review of laws and regulations, one part. But review of various risks arising from various activities within the organization is second part. That means when, I will show you an example also, that in an organization, there could be multiple type of risk. So you might have heard the term risk management. Okay. So when it comes to the risk management, we saw one of the examples, one of the, area for the internal audit function. I'll show you something on the risk management, and I'll also tell you how internal audit function contributes in this particular risk management. Okay. So let's say this is again part of your annual report of a particular company. I'm not, this is publicly available data totally. Okay. Now, this is risk management. They have developed the enterprise risk management framework. Over there is a risk management committee, management oversight committee, chief risk and risk function. Now, sometimes here, or in most of the times rather, this risk function also includes your internal audit function. They basically reviews the risk. They basically review the risk along with the other committees. Okay. So there are other committees who look into the risk. I'll just show you some type of risk which are there, which also, internal audit function also reviews and they evaluate the risk within the organization. Supply chain disruption related risk. This is one of the risks. Supply chain disruption, then commodity inflation. Global economic and geopolitical environment related. IT system, information security and data management. Growth strategy, competitive business efficiency. Human capital related. Distribution channels. Now, these all risks, what internal audit does here over, internal audit goes and they verify, like, okay, let's say for example, distribution channels, retailer network, and client service delivery, whether the entity has appropriately put up the measures, mitigations, strategies to mitigate the distribution channel risk, or for example, procurement related risk. This one, supply chain. Tomorrow, if the raw material is not available in the company, then the company will not able to manufacture. Biggest supply chain is the biggest related risk. So internal audit function will not only look into the supply chain related, procurement related function. They will not only audit the procurement function, but what they will do is they will check in case of a failure of a supply chain function, in case of a procurement issues, what are the plans, what are the policies that the company has, okay, that can enable the company to procure or to avoid these kind of disruptions. For example, is company relying upon only one single sole supplier, or whether the company has multiple suppliers, in which region the supplier is situated, whether the supplier is situated in a region where there could be a geopolitical issue. A lot of scenarios are there. Okay. Now, there is, I would recommend everyone, if you have time, just go through these risks. And by reading the mitigations and opportunities, you will come to know that how internal audit can be helpful for a company in all these areas, what they do actually. For example, material cost reduction through value analysis and value engineering. This is something also, internal audit, once these kind of plans and policies are devised, they are prepared, it is not directly implemented. Internal audit function first audit them. They do a pre-implementation audit of these plans and policies. Before implementing, whether it is appearing everything is good or not on the paper, whether it is aligned with the entity's objective, vision, mission, is it ethical within the code of conduct. A lot of things are there. You do a pre-implementation audit of those plans, and then that is implemented. Along with implementation, there is a continuous monitoring by the internal audit function. And then once a plan is successfully implemented, then sometimes there is a post-implementation audit. For example, IT. Okay. In IT, what happens is it's not only, the IT teams are involved. Before implementing any of the IT systems, internal audit goes and performs pre-implementation audit. Pre-implementation IT audit. Yes, they go and check whether the plan to implement the IT systems within the organization is appropriate or not. For example, let's say the company want to upgrade the ERP. So they have prepared a plan. Now internal audit will check what is the upgradation plan that company has prepared, whether that is appropriate, what is the timeline they are looking into. Are there any risk within the plan? If there are risk within the plan, then whether appropriate provisions or mitigation policies being devised to avoid those risks or to reduce those risks to the acceptable level. So there are multiple things when it comes to the scope of internal audit. You should go and sometimes, if you have time, you can read this particular part. Risk management, risk governance is a very, very critical area in today's time for the internal audit function. Utilization of resources, accomplishment of the goals and objectives of the company, all these things nowadays are part of the internal audit function. They perform the assessment. For example, over here, I'll just show you. See, information risk is managed strategically and operationally through a comprehensive programs. Okay. Then there is a continuous assurance being done. Now, this continuous assurance is done by the internal audit function. If you see over here, risk governance, there are lot many things which are done. Okay. So risk governance, continuous assurance, this is nothing but done by the internal audit function. So it is very big when it comes to the today's corporates or multinational companies. Not only that, if you read the risk, there are multiple risks involved into this: environmental risk, climate change, then you have a litigation, regulatory related risk, then you have a lot of things involved. And accordingly, internal audit function looks into. Clear? Any doubt till now? Any doubt? Okay. Now we will discuss very important part. That is the integrity, objectivity, and independence of the internal auditor. Okay. Integrity and objectivity. We have also discussed in SA 610 that we look for the internal auditor. Okay. Objectivity, just now we discussed. Integrity is also should be there. Integrity. Can anyone tell me what is integrity means? We have discussed multiple times. What do you mean by integrity?
Being honest in the professional endeavors.
Absolutely. So integrity and objectivity is, we have discussed multiple times. Not an issue. Now comes the very important part, is the independence of the internal audit function. Now you will say, sir, how that is possible? On one side you talked about, okay, there could not be an independence for the internal audit function, but now you're talking about independence of the internal audit function. How that is possible? See, independence of the internal audit function is basically again, related to the organizational structure that is there, how the internal audit function is working. And sometimes internal audit function also issues an assurance based report. Yes, internal audit function at times issues assurance based reports. Now you will have a question that if they are issuing assurance based report, then whether the essays are applicable to them. Answer is no, because their assurance is different. Okay, so I'll also explain you. There is one standard, that is standard on internal audit, SIA 110. SIA 110 talks about the nature of assurance that can be provided through internal audit report. Basically, SIA 110 basically gives you, what kind of reports internal audit function can issue. What kind of internal audit reports internal audit function can issue. Okay. Over there is an assurance, some kind of assurance is there in the internal audit report. Now, if I talk about some kind of assurance, that means they have to be independent, because the moment I talk about assurance, the requirement of independence comes into the picture. So accordingly, they have to be independent when they are issuing assurance based reports. And when they are issuing assurance based report, they have to comply with this particular standard. Okay, with respect to how to issue assurance based report, what kind of assurance they can involve. Okay, whether it is similar level of assurance that is there in your normal audit report, or it is different. Okay, so a lot of things are there that we need to look into that when internal audit issues an assurance. But usually it is kind of limited assurance, or sometimes it is reasonable assurance also, but it is not that kind of assurance that you are seeing in the external audit report. Okay. So internal audit assurance engagement refers to an assignment basically where you have, where the internal auditor express an opinion in order to enhance the degree of confidence of the particular entity on that subject matter, the way we seen in the audit. But here, the level of the enhancement of the degree of confidence, that depends, it totally depends upon the type of engagement. Okay. So it depends from engagement to engagement, what kind of level of assurance they are providing. Now, when they are providing, let's say, limited assurance, okay, when they are providing limited assurance, at that time also they have to comply SIA 110, plus they have to be independent. Now, what is independence? How they have to maintain independence? Basically, when it comes to the independent, internal auditors, okay, internal auditors have to demonstrate that they have mitigated or the risk with respect to the fundamental principles is an acceptable level. That means they have to demonstrate that they are the what you say, out of the pressure, they don't have any pressure, they do not have any conflict of interest, they are not influenced by any of the decisions of the management. That they have to demonstrate when it comes to the independence. So, and also they have to demonstrate that they are not assuming any function of the management, means they are not performing any responsibility of the management. By doing these two things, they can demonstrate that they are independent. On one side, I may discuss that internal audit might be involved in a lot of things. They might be involved in risk management, they might be involved in XYZ things. But on the second side, I'm saying they have to maintain independence. How that is possible? Yes, that is a challenging task. Okay, the more expanded the internal audit function is, the more you have a what do you say? I can say conflict of interest or self-review threat.
Because it is because the internal auditors are likely as an employee in the organization. That's why the independence issue is arising there.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Also, they are involved in a lot of things. They are involved in risk management. They are involved in IT related things, as I discussed. They are involved in a lot of things. So there could be self-review thread also. On, let's say, for example, pre-implementation audit. Okay, let's say company wanted to implement a particular new accounting standard or Ind AS that recently came out. Internal audit reviewed the policy, they did the pre-implementation audit, and they suggested some measures that okay, these are the issues you need to implement or you need to rectify that. After implementation, if internal audit goes again and does an audit of that process, don't you think it's a review self-review threat? Because at the first stage, the pre-implementation audit gave or provided a direction to the management how to implement. The same thing was implemented. Now internal audit going again, doing any post implementation audit, it will be a self review threat only. Yes or no? So at that point in time, they have to work in such a way that these kind of threats are kept at a minimum level. So when they are reviewing, when they are performing any function, they have to make sure that self-review threat doesn't arise. They don't have to assume the responsibility of the management, and that's how they have to manage the independence. Clear? Any doubt with respect to this one? Any doubt?
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yes.
Sir, if there is any conflict of interest, then which authority that internal auditor should go?
If there is a conflict of interest, then usually they report to the audit committee, those charged with governance. They have to report to those charged with governance about the conflict of interest.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So with this, we understood okay how independence is important for the internal audit function also. We'll not go into the detail for the SA 610 why independence is also important for the statutory auditor, that we have already discussed. Okay, how to rely upon the work of internal audit, we have already discussed that in SA 610. I will not go to that on that part again. But this is something it's necessary to understand, because it's not like that okay, we are internal auditors, we will not maintain independence. No, not at all. It's incorrect. internal auditor has to also maintain independence to the extent it is possible. Now, as I said, that internal auditors are involved into multiple areas. They are involved into 10 different areas that we discussed. That means if they are involved into 10 different areas, so they should possess these qualities also. I cannot just involve internal auditor into IT audit. They don't know anything about IT. No, I cannot involve internal auditor into ESG related things when they don't know about ESG. That's why if I talk about multi-dimensional, multidisciplinary internal audit function, they should possess these qualities that are there, like expertise in the control system, accounting and finance knowledge, operational knowledge, technical skills, confidentiality, management and communication skills. These all things are bare minimum that they should have. Then only I can say, okay, they have the multidisciplinary and expert internal audit team. Any doubt till now? Any doubt? Okay. Now, coming to the very important part, very critical part, that is the performing the internal audit. Okay. How we perform the internal audit, what we do while, how do we perform the internal audit? And then we will discuss some important aspects with respect to the reporting. So first we'll discuss the performance of internal audit. Basically understanding how internal audit assignments are being performed. See, when it comes to the performing the internal audit assignment, remember one important thing. It is an audit. So whatever we have learned about the audit will be applicable over here. So if I talk about stages which are there with respect to performance of audit, not the internal audit, I'm talking about only audit. If I ask you, tell me which are the stages which are there for the performance of audit. So which are those stages? How do you perform audit? Simple. How do you perform audit? Quickly, guys.
Funding of business,
Yes.
planning,
What else?
reporting,
Yes.
Team, audit team, then execution of the work,
Yes. Anything else? No? Very good, Manish. Yes. See, when it comes to the performance of an audit, what we do? Simple. We first of all, understand the entity. Yes or no?
yes sir,
Understand the entity. Then after understanding the entity, we perform risk assessment. We design the audit procedures responding to an assessed risk. So risk assessment plus designing audit procedures. Yes or no? Then you perform procedures. Yes or no? Now, when I say performing procedures, basically you collect the evidence, you gather the required information, whatever information you have, okay, from whatever source it is available. Then You may, once you have the evidence, once you perform the procedures, you evaluate the results. It's not like that, okay, I perform the procedures, matter over, audit done. No. Whatever procedures I have performed, I might have identified some observation over here. I need to extrapolate that misstatement. Somewhere I need to link those misstatements. For example, I identified a misstatement in sales. I need to link it back to the trade receivables, whether it is there or not. I do some kind of analysis. Yes or no? I evaluate the results. And then lastly, after evaluating the results, what I do? Report.
Communicate with those charged with management and report.
Yes, correct. This is a similar thing I perform in internal audit also. Similar thing. Just you will see some of the change in the terminology, that is understanding the entity, it's same. Second, when I say risk assessment and designing audit procedures, it is nothing but performing audit plan. This is planning that I'm doing. That is here when I say perform audit procedures, okay, it is nothing but you're gathering evidence, gathering information. When I say evaluate the results, is nothing but performing checks. That you perform checks. You do analytics, you check the results and everything. Okay. And reporting is reporting.
Sir, can we classify these 5 steps into the steps like first is scope, then is planning, then fieldwork, then analysis and reporting?
Yes. First understanding the entity, then scoping, then performing, evaluating, and then analyzing or the reporting. Yes.
Yes, clear, sir.
It's nothing different than what you have seen till now. Again, whenever it will come to any type of audit, it is the same. Somewhere.
Yes, sir. I read. Yes, sir. I read in the ISCA subject very long before.
So down the line, you might say different type of audits. They might have a tweaked, some procedure. Okay, they might be gathering information instead of performing audit procedures, but at the end, the underlying goal is the same. That you perform procedure to gather the audit evidence. Over there, you have audit evidence. You have here, you have information. Somewhere else, you have something else. It is same. Now, for example, performing audit checks. Okay, or evaluating the results, basically. Sometimes you find interchangeably that, some people say that, okay, in performing the checks, I only do analytics. Some might say, in some audit, you will say that, okay, no, we first gather the information and then we perform the test separately. Means, for example, once you roll out the requirement to the entity, okay, these are the samples that I want to test. You gather all the data from the entity. You gather sample data, you gather documents, you do everything, gathering up the information, and then you test. In forensic also, accounting, when you go, over there, you directly don't jump into the testing. You first gather as much data as possible, as much information as possible, and then you go for the testing, investigation, and then you go for the investigation. So somewhere in some different audit, you might find, interchange in the gathering the information and then performing the test. Somewhere, you will see this is being done together. So slight differences and tweak will be there. That is fine. Now the question is, SIAs will also be asked in the exam. See, you are not expected to answer on all the SIAs. No. So the SIAs that are there in the study material, if somewhere it is reference, you can give a reference. But it is not like that it will be, a dedicated question on a particular SIA. No, it will not like that. It will not be the case. Any doubt till now with respect to how to perform internal audit? Any doubt? Okay. Now, very important part that I want to discuss is about the last part, which is reporting. Okay. Because when it comes to the gathering information, performing checks or evaluating the results, risk assessment, design, understanding the entity, it's same that you have seen till now. I will not go into that particular detail, but something new that you will see is the reporting. And here we will learn one SIA. So we will learn about particular SIA, that is SIA 370. That is reporting results. Okay. Remember SA 700? SA 700? Yes or no, guys? Basic. So SA 700, what it does? Forming an opinion. Yes. Very good, Manish. It deals with how to issue an opinion, how to form your opinion, basically how to draft your audit report. Yes or no? Similar way. In a similar way, okay, reporting results also guides on how to report the results. See, here I would not say opinion because it's not an opinion, it's in results of your audit process, of your assignment. As I said, internal audit could perform multiple different assignments. That's why we use the term reporting of results. Whatever results are there, whatever outcome is there, that is required to be reported. Now, usually, when it comes to the reporting of results, there are two different type of reportings which are done. Okay. So, basically, there are two different type of reportings which are done. One is your assignment reporting. Okay. So, IA assignment reporting. And one is your periodic reporting. Okay. Now, what is assignment reporting? Assignment reporting basically is a report specific area wise or assignment wise that is prepared at the end of each assignment. It highlights the observation that were identified, okay, suggestions which are FRN, if there are any, how to identify the suggestions, how to identify how to mitigate those observations. A lot of things are there in that assignment reporting. Now, these assignment reports are issued to the management, executive management, or those who are involved in that particular assignment. Now, when you combine multiple assignment reportings, okay, when you combine these multiple assignments that the internal audit take or internal audit undertake during a particular period, what they do is they combine all that particular reporting. Okay, they will combine this. They will combine this reporting. They will combine all the periodic assignment related reportings. Sorry. And they will issue one periodic reporting, which is a comprehensive report covering all the assignment related reportings. It will cover about that period, this period, what assignments were undertaken, what was the plan prepared. Okay, let's say plan was prepared to do 3 assignments or 4 assignments. Whether those 4 assignments have been done or not, what is the outcome of those 4 assignments? This is presented to the, as I said, this is presented to the executive committee or executives or board of directors. or let's say sometimes CEO or that particular department head. Let's say I'm doing procurement assignment audit, so I'll chief procurement officer. I'll present this to that. But when I talk about periodic reporting, this is presented to audit committee. Now, again, one particular area that I want to discuss over here is in most of the listed entity, okay, where the audit committee is there, you see audit committee has to meet. There is a frequency given for the audit committee. Okay, what is the frequency that audit committee is required to follow to meet? Anyone? Do anyone does anyone know about that frequency for the audit committee to meet?
4 times in a year.
Yes, absolutely correct.
And gap should not be more than 120 days.
Yes. Okay, so there is a frequency given. Basically, it is kind of quarterly. If I say it becomes quarterly only, yes or no? So if it becomes quarterly and this periodic reporting is done to audit committee, that means somewhere down the line this this periodic reporting is also happening quarterly. So you can say that this periodic reporting also happens quarterly. So SEBI LODR basically talks about 4 times a financial year, means quarterly meeting of audit committee. And this periodic reporting is done to audit committee, so it is also done quarterly reporting. Now, this is I'm talking about general practice which is being followed. Not necessarily it should be quarterly. In some companies, it could be 6 monthly, perfectly fine. It's not like that they have to present it quarterly. But the general trend which is being followed is a quarterly. Okay, so quarterly reportings happen, that periodic reporting part, where they share this report to the audit committee, highlighting all the engagements, assignments which are done. And for each of the assignment, what was the observation? Now, there is one important part in that report. Very important part in this report. That is the follow-up. Okay. That is the follow-up that is done. Now, what happens is in engagement related reportings, you cannot do a follow-up because you at the time of engagement, you just are issuing the report. Once you complete your engagement, you are issuing the report. Yes or no? So at the time of performing the engagement or at the time of close of engagement, you don't have whether the management has rectified those issues or not. But when it comes to the periodic reporting, at that point in time, let's say I did in month of Jan. This particular engagement was done in the month of Jan. Now this periodic reporting is happening in the April. So from Jan to April, I have a visibility whether any action has been taken on this report or not. Yes or no? So along with the observations, I report on the follow-up. So as on date of the periodic reporting, what is the status of that observation? Whether it has been closed down, whether it has been rectified by the management, or whether it is still open. So this is known as the periodic follow-up, monitoring and reporting of prior audit reports, issues, which is done as per SIA 390. SIA 390 says that you have to monitor, okay, and report on prior audit issues, which is done as a part of your periodic reporting. Even after that also, there is a basically, sometimes some entities follows ETR kind of reporting. What is ATR kind of reporting? That is action taken report. Now, usually on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, whatever period they have decided, internal audit function issues this ATR, which lists down the observation till now identified in various, different audit engagements, this assignments, and what is the action that has been taken. Now you can say that when you do a periodic reporting, you might merge up the action taken report in the follow-up part for that particular reporting. That is fine. For the rest of the separate period, let's say if you do issue ATR monthly, so for the quarter, when there is an audit committee, you merge up the ATR with the periodic reporting. But for the rest of the months, you standalone basis, you issue on a standalone basis ATR. Perfectly fine. That's a periodic tracking of the observations. That is done as per the SIA 390. Any doubt till now? Any doubt? Okay. Now, basically, when it comes to SA 370, okay, it talks about that, okay, what is the, basically, you can say, like, what is the content and format of audit report, how it is to be issued and everything. Basically, when it comes to the content and format of internal audit report, it depends upon the engagement or the type of assignment, which basically decides the detailed format. However, there is a suggestive format, like kind of, minimum items that could be included in your audit report. Minimum items that could be included in your audit report. Basically, those items could be, for example, your overview of the objective. See, whenever you are issuing a report, it's always advisable to provide the detail, like why this engagement was done, what was the objective, scope, and approach of this engagement in each and every audit. Whether, just now we saw the compliance audit, we saw the performance audit. Over there also, although the format of audit report, rest of the things were different, but over there also the objectives, scope, approach, it was mentioned, because it gives the clarity to the reader that how the audit was done, why the audit was done, this audit is about what. So that's why always the report, whenever reporting is done, the first element or the first component of the report is about the overview of the objectives, scope, and your approach. Then you provide the standards that you have followed. It could be standards on internal auditing, it could be something different, whatever it is, that the audit was done in accordance with the standards. Then you need to give an executive summary. Listing down the key observations, important aspects specific to the scope of assignment and everything, whatever is there. Then your corrective actions. On the each observation. So here you list down the observations, and then on the observation you give the corrective actions. In the last part, it's an optional, if applicable, is a nature of assurance. I would write, if any. Not necessarily that internal audit assignments provide assurance. No, not necessarily. Okay, if they are providing, then you can write the nature of assurance that they are dealing into. So, this is how you can basically, issue internal, this is how, the internal audit reports look like. Let me see if I have one example of internal audit report so that, it would be easy for you guys to understand. And I would also show you something on respect to reporting of, what do you say, observations, basically. Okay. Like how the rating is done of the observations. Let me see if I have one example to show you guys. Just a minute, I'm opening it up. Again, whatever I'm showing you is the publicly available data. It's not something that, I have, but it's publicly available data. So it is the closest thing I could get for your understanding. Okay. Wait a minute. Just a minute. It's taking time to open it up. Okay. So this is the group internal audit report. Again, don't focus on the name. It's publicly available data. So you can easily go through and get it from the portal, the public domain. Now, basically, as I said, the overview about the report. Okay, this is the mandate, basically, reporting lines where they do their report. Okay, team, qualifications, everything about the internal audit function, stakeholder, like all those things are there. Then you have the, this is kind of a periodic reporting report where a periodic reporting is done, not the engagement reporting. So this is the engagement that were taken under that particular period. Okay, a particular year and particular engagement, these engagements are there, and this is kind of, the observations which are there. You can say those are the processes and the observations which are there under that. And one more thing I'll just show you. Yeah. So in this, each and every observation, you would find over here that they provide some recommendations. So these are the recommendations that they provide, and they specify these are the recommendations which were given in each of the engagements. Now, if you see, the objective of the engagement was written over here. This is the objective. This is the outcome of the engagement, outcome of the audit, what outcome it was there. And this is the recommendations. So in each and every engagement, you will find like this way: the objective, the outcome, and the recommendations or issues which, if any, identified. So this is one of the example of the periodic reporting that happens. Okay, something similar. But again, there is no standard format as such. You may find different periodic reporting format for the different, entity. Okay, that each and every entity follows a different format. Some might have, this kind of format. Some might have a one detailed format. So it depends upon entity to entity. One more thing that I want to show you guys is the charter, internal audit charter. Again, this is the publicly available data. It's not something, that it's not available. It's publicly available. So don't focus on the name of the company. Basically, it's just an internal audit charter, the document that I was talking about, that defines the mission of the internal audit function, what they have to do. Okay. Scope of their work. See, this is the scope. Risks are appropriately identified, interaction with various governance groups, significant financial, managerial, operational information is accurate, reliable, employee actions, applicable legal laws and regulations, resources are required economically, program plans and objectives are achieved, quality and continuous improvement, significant legislative and regulatory issues, then how the team should be, what team, what should be the team made up of, their accountability, their independence related part, that they are not required to do any non-audit related work which may conflict in their role and independence. Okay, their responsibilities of the internal control related responsibilities, compliance related, subsidiary related, risk management related, quality assurance related, reporting related. Okay, to issue the reports. Okay, what should be there in the reporting? See, they are specified, like what should be the reporting, state the scope, purpose, extent, conclusions, make recommendations, acknowledge the action taken or proposed by the man or proposed or by management. Okay, then best practices in benchmarking, leadership development, authority related, what authority internal audit holds in an organization. For example, unrestricted accesses, full and free access to audit committee. Okay, obtain necessary assistance and all that stuff. Standards on practicing, internal code of ethics, all those things are there. So this is how the charter look like for the internal audit function, and that they have to follow throughout the each and every audit. Okay, so this was basically about the internal audit that we discussed. We discussed about the reporting part also. We discussed about the various type of follow-ups, and we have already discussed multiple times about the relationship between the internal and external auditor in the start, in the previous sessions. So I'll not go on to that part because SA 610 we have discussed in detail already. Okay, direct assistance and everything. Management function we have also discussed, like how they support about the management functions. So that was about the internal audit function. Any doubt with respect to any of the topic? Any of the thing? Yes, Ginny, your question with respect to the previous chapter. Okay. Basically, whatever things are given by the government as a part of any program. Okay. Yes, they are covered in the audit. Their utilization, their impact, everything is covered under the audit. So whether it was budgeted amount or not, whether it was approved or not, everything it is covered. And it is also shown in the audit reports. Any other doubt, guys? Any doubt with respect to internal audit? Yes, no? Yes, they also show about those facilities. Yes, Jenny. So it is included in those reports. You can pick up those reports. It's available. Any doubt, guys? Any doubt? See, the more doubts you will ask, the more you will understand about the topic. So don't restrict yourself on asking doubts. You can ask multiple times. No? No doubts? Okay. As a next step, what I expect from you. In the next session, before starting chapter number 17, I will discuss on the questions of chapter number 16. As a quick revision, also you need to read the chapter if you are not read. Okay, and you have to ask your doubts, whatever you have. So read the chapter, ask as many doubts as you can, and in the next lecture, please, be prepared for the questions. Yes, Jenny, definitely, I'll do that. No issues. Any other doubt, guys? Again, one more, like any other doubt? No? Okay, great. So thank you, guys. Thank you for participating in today's session. I will see you in the next lecture, where we will discuss the questions on chapter number 16, and then we'll start chapter number 17. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Manish. Yes.